All right, how's it going, my magnificent sons of bitches? Decided to take today off, so I figured I would come on and uh, do another video. Particularly, this is about the YouTube conservative universe, which tends to be theoretically, but like I said, the traffic on YouTube and on these platforms isn't as high as it used to be, and you're seeing guys like Anthony Brian Logan, and it's like a lot of us have done this before, particularly if you're familiar with the YWC, and you followed my old channel, the Prodigal. Well, it was the Prodigal Hill before they ended up terminating that channel. Now this channel is the Prodigal Hill, and so a lot of this shit we've done before. A lot of the over the top, going back and forth, trying to sell each other out. We've done here on YouTube before. How's it going, Raymond? Got Raymond McLeod in the house. But yeah, we've all seen this before here on YouTube. I think that at one point in time, me and Stephen Rose were going to buy the YWC, various works that we've kind of gotten together to get interest on a said product or, whatever we were covering at the time. But now we have the political sphere that is become like political YouTube. And, ultimately, this is to me kind of a distraction when you look at the Steven Crowder. So really, at the end of the day, how much do the conservatives? I mean, you got a guy like Jimmy Dore who hit the nail right on the head. Both sides are kind of insidious to a degree. They're both a little evil. They're both a little bit shady. Both sides are. You know what I'm saying? Whenever you're talking what constitutes the political spectrum and really what these social media platforms have dilapidated into, it's all kind of generic, to be honest with you. When you get on Facebook today, you don't see a lot of your friends posting memes, pointing out hypocrisies, showing ironic truths, stuff like that. Very few. You know what I'm saying? That's, coming from the skeptical view, mainly it's to drive some narrative. And this is on both sides. Regardless if you want to sit there and say that the left is pushing a narrative, the right is pushing the same narrative. They're just having a different opinion on said narrative. And this is kind of where we're at in society today, is just a bunch of shills pushing all the organic traffic out. So these markets then become saturated with nothing but shill content. Steven Crowder is a gatekeeper, but we could sit there and plainly see that while he's going out trying to, I guess, hijack what would be the counterculture revolution, because I consider myself and various other YouTubers, many people that are on here that were doing independent content, I consider y'all the counterculture revolution, not the cultural. The cultural revolution was something that Obama was trying to push. It's a playbook of the Saul Alinsky tactics, and I was one of the guys that was exposing it whenever it was going on. This is where you get your identity politics. This is where you get your wokeism. This is where you get all of the you're a bigot, racist, homophobe, xenophobe, and all the other phobes that they can sit there and label you with. And so, as far as the left is concerned, they've dilapidated themselves, so they've regressed so much into pure and unadulterated immorality that they don't effectively advocate for anybody anymore. You go ahead and take a look at the BLM shit. Ultimately, they have dilapidated the any kind of real civil cause or any kind of civil case, of black issues down to the lowest common denominator so much that generally everybody is always going to be skeptical now. Whenever you come, it's like the boy who cried wolf. You've cried wolf so many times and said that these non-issues are such these huge elaborate issues right now that it's going to be hard for people to go ahead and accept any kind of real issue that you bring to them now. And this isn't only just for the BLM shit. It's also for the LGBTQ stuff. If you're a homosexual out there, they've dilapidated that issue of saying having drag time story hours and stuff, and the left, being exactly who the left is, have demoralized any kind of gay rights or gay issues that may be legitimate concerns to address. They've delegitimized that whole group, that it whenever people complain about now real issues, it's going to be kind of hard because everybody's going to sit there and because they've kind of put in this form of pedophilia that it infects your causes and it affects your positions and whatnot. So, and this is what the left, and it's not only just those, it's almost every other issue. So, they dumb down everything. It's a going with the left on anything. Even, there may be issues that I could probably agree with the left on. However, they dumb down everything. They throw their weight around. Um, and essentially, they're the jobbers on the internet, basically. They take these issues and they radically change them to make them inefficient, I guess is what you would call it, to where nobody's going to care. Anybody who would be willing to go ahead and contribute to, fix the problems are going to be like, well, look at these lunatics. I don't want to be associated with these lunatics. I don't want to sit down and talk about environmental issues because these people are so extreme. They're so cathartic, and you're not going to get anything reasonable out of them. It's just going to dilapidate into a regressive society. And that's the left. And then on the other hand, you have the right, who have their own wedge issues. But they don't really want to confront the actual issues. Do you know what I'm saying? They don't want to fix the problems. They just want to come up with theoretical solutions that are likely not going to work and just going to sit there. And it's basically like putting a band aid on a broken leg. The problem will still be there. It'll still metastasize. But, ultimately, it doesn't affect them pretty much. And that's what you get from both sides. So what do we have right now? I mean, the left have already had their breakdowns. Like the Young Turks, as far as anybody's concerned, they're kind of a walking joke anymore. And, you take the story with like Damar Hamlin. It's a perfect example. So supposedly, this kid passes out on the field. Now, do I believe it was legitimate? I think that the NFL used this as a plot device to go ahead and justify implementing a new rule if somebody gets that bad hurt, just stopping a game. It was a rule that they were already kicking around, so they needed a reason to stop a game. So said person went out, grabbed his heart. Now, according to the narrative, however, the motherfucker died twice. He died on the field once, they resuscitated him, and then died on the way to the hospital. So then you have a lot of people that come out, rightfully so, and blame it on the VAXX. And, rightfully so, because I damn sure don't need an NFL player to sit there and pass out on the field to notice an abundance of paramedics, particularly in my own regions. Just whenever you see them lights going on and you see an ambulance hauling ass from one location to another, just keep track of how many you see. And think of to yourself that, it was a rare occasion, probably back, 3 or 4 years ago, to see an ambulance. It wasn't, now it's the new norm. Here, I'm constantly seeing ambulances whenever I go to work. So, what am I supposed to sit there and make of all this? Well, of course, I'm going to have my degree of, I'm going to have my degree of thought on what could be causing this. So, I mean, it's certainly, you can see this is called empirical evidence. You can see it in your day-to-day life. And nobody talks about this. Not here on the internet, not like we used to. We used to sit there and, have discussions about this and be saying, okay, what's going on? If I have to have an ambulance come up to my workplace, sometimes twice a shift, to go ahead and pick people up and to take them to the hospital or whatnot, and it's happening at an abundant rate now than it has in the past, well, what's going on? Why are these people all of a sudden falling out all over the place now? Are they overworked? It doesn't seem like it. The sheer fact is that there's not a lot of people working right now as it is. So do they talk about that? No, absolutely not. What it becomes is Steven Crowder has an issue with the Daily Wire. Okay, with the contract. Now, ultimately, it doesn't matter. If you're on YouTube or if you're an independent content creator, you can kind of look at both situations. You can look at people like Candace Owens. You can look at people like Ben Shapiro. You can go ahead and look at people on the Daily Wire, and you can tell, okay, you know what? They're kind of restricted. They're really not talking. I haven't watched any of them really because they're always like, oh, well, the Democrats, the Republicans, the Democrats, the Republicans, and that, you get a little burnt out on that, particularly whenever it's not election season, but they need to keep interest into their little channels. You see what I'm saying? And like I said, we've done that before. We've had to do the same exact shit whenever people were losing interest in our channels. When you go and look at the traffic on Twitter, I dare you, go look at what's trending on Twitter. See how many of these of those, the organic, how many of these tweets are getting like over 1 million views? Not many of them. Most of them are getting like 80,000, 35,000 here, maybe. The traffic on Twitter has died off. The traffic on YouTube has died off. And you can point at me and call me a conspiracy theorist all you want to, but I dare you to go look at your numbers from back whenever you were probably getting more views to now, and you'll see that traffic isn't as organic as you thought it was. And this is what happens when you insult your fan base. I can guarantee you that more people are probably getting on YouTube for entertainment purposes for the most part. They're watching HBO Max on YouTube, or they're watching, they'll be watching the next John Wick on YouTube. They don't care about the commentary that you, because it's generic. It's not like, you can sit there and say what you want to about Alex Jones. Me and Alex Jones has had my agreement. Whenever he bent the knee before the Comic-Con experiment, before that event, what is it, 201 or whatever the hell it was, before all the freaking Bill Gates experiments that he was going to sit there and implement into society, Alex Jones went ahead and bent the knee to the Ebola stir trying to get implemented here. And there were so many people calling him out, Russian vids, that are no longer here anymore. There was a little bit of integrity here on YouTube at one point in time. That integrity is gone, particularly for the independent content creators. And I see a lot of these independent content creators that come out, and they're just basically a cheap imitation, a cheap ripoff of other commentators that I've seen on here. One said guy is like he kind of looks like a hillbilly, and he was doing these parody of scary movie people, and then he was interacting with them as a hillbilly. Now, there was a channel out here called Dare to Be Stupid. More of a left-leaning channel, but his content was good. So I'm not going to judge your political leanings if you produce good content. And he produced good content. But essentially, it was the same thing as the old redneck hillbilly guy that was, doing essentially trying to be a cheap imitation of Dare to Be Stupid. There was a lot of other channels that I see just blatantly being ripped off. Charlie Wolf Kale being one of them. There's a channel out there that rips him off blatantly, but they're not as good. And I can guarantee you that the traffic on their channels, whether they have more views or not than Charlie Wolfkale, the quality, and I mean, it's not as organic as the following that Charlie had built whenever he was doing his thing on here. So you can go around, pretend to be Charlie Wolfkill all you want, but you're just never going to be, there's never going to be another Charlie Wolfkill on this site. And that's not just for Charlie, that's for various other of you people out there that are, were doing your thing back in the days here on YouTube. I guarantee you could probably go out, and if you looked hard enough and you put in the same kind of subjects, you'll find your doppelganger here that they've kind of replaced you with here on YouTube. But, you look at the conservative side of YouTube, and it's as synthetic and it's as cheap and it's as artificial as the left was, with their cathartic ramblings of everybody's ma racist, everybody's ma bigoted, everybody's ma homophobe. And that's why, when they were trying to push that counter or that cultural revolution, guys like Alex Jones, guys like Mark Dice, guys like Hard Bastard, who are still here, guys like Sticks, X, and Hammer, a lot of them started to change their perspective. And then they started to do this countercultural stuff here on YouTube. Why? Because there was more of an organic audience wanting to see the, an alternative viewpoint other than some internet thought cathartically rambling about how everything is collapsing and society is, ultimately garbage. It's rape culture, it's this culture, it's that culture, and flinging shit on the wall and praying for it to stick to go ahead and get, 25K views or likes. And that's basically what it was. It was just basically a cheap imitation. So now you get these conservative people that are following the formula, much like we would do in the YWC, about, and what they used to do in the great debate community. They used to do the same things. It's always this polar conflict that we used to have, going back and forth, and it would, help our channels grow a little bit by constantly having this. But I think that the formula here has died off for quite a while now, in that perspective of just going back and forth. And the reason why it's died off is because most of us understand that there's a common enemy, and that enemy is the tyrannical oligarch that is the big tech industry that censors everything here, where it really kind of limits competition. So that, having that conflict only works whenever you have people there that are organic, much like myself, much like Dark Horse, much like some of these other people here, whether it be WJ and whatnot. Whenever people are organically contributing to that, and in fact, whenever we would have our conflicts, when we would do our works, I wasn't going around and liking up my videos. First off, most of my sock accounts, everybody already knew what my sock accounts were because I've done videos on my sock accounts. I've admitted that these were me. And in fact, sometimes I've changed the pictures on the sock accounts with my picture on them just to go ahead and like my own stuff. But it's only like 4 of them. Now, the stuff with Seth Trollins and stuff like that, that's entirely different. That's not me. But for the most part, I was doing a lot of trolling like that where, I had all my pictures on all my sock accounts and like my own stuff just to troll people. But for the most part, when we would get into these works, whenever we get into these storylines, I wasn't botting up my views and I wasn't botting up my videos with views. What I would do, however, though, is I would go to people who were talking about whatever we were talking about, whatever we were disputing, and I would like their videos, bot up their views, like up their content with as many likes as I could, just because they were contributing, whether they were against me or whether they were for me. I would go to their videos, bot up their views, and then like their stuff, and because they were contributing to whatever work we were doing. And then they would get more invested to do more videos and whatnot. And then the next thing you know, somebody would do a video on them, or they would join them and do a video on me, or whatever it was. And we kind of all worked together a little bit more. These guys just basically came in and hijacked all that stuff. Where they didn't want our commentary. They didn't want our art form that we were doing, or our shows, or our product, because our product was a direct competition to anything that they were doing on network television at the time. whether they be on Fox, MSNBC, CBS. It doesn't matter. If you were making content, whether it be parody videos, whether it be edited videos, whether it be documentaries, whether it be comedy skits, whatever you were doing, you were in direct competition with the mainstream and the media. And effectively, because there was more of a market out here for an independent mind frame, because the left has to hijack all platforms. The only way that communism can exist is if there's no competition. And I can tell you right now that the left, everybody that's on the left, are pure, unadulterated communists. And the only way that communists can exist, the only way that they can have any meaningful impact on a society is if there is no competition. And then you got the fascists that are on the right. And mind you, the right are fascist, not by their own choosing, to be honest with you. I mean, most of the fascist policies are implemented by people on the left that are so slowly trying to progress us into like a communist form of government implementation, a soft communism. So you're going to have to go through fascism before you even reach communism. And ultimately, the more fascist restrictions are actually implemented by those facilitating. And like I said, you want to go ahead and put any kind of real money on it, you're going to be wrong. But the Democrats have totally run the country since, probably no telling how long. They're the party of white nationalists, and they've ultimately controlled the party even whenever Reagan was in office. I mean, all the state departments, all of them have always voted Democrat. DC has never voted for a Republican. So this is how we know that DC has always been run by the Democrats, regardless of what you feel one way or the other. So, it's the communist, regime has to depend. But you look at the deal with like the fascist on the conservative side. You're Steven Crowder's, you're Ben Shapiro's, all of the people dealing with the Daily Wire, and they know more benefit from competition either. They have to limit it to controlled competition. They have to control the markets. That's what fascism is. They have to sit there and control the number of people investing. The Daily Wire or the Mug Club doesn't get as big as they are without YouTube coming in, censoring a lot of people, Facebook coming in, kicking off a lot of people off of these platforms to go ahead and make their little product. Well, I got news for both sides. Whether you're the Daily Wire, whether you're Steven Crowder, whether you're the Young Turks, here's the issue. I go to Rumble. Whenever I'm listening, I go to Dan Bongino on Rumble, or I listen to Hard Bastard on Rumble. Sometimes, every once in a while, I'll listen to a Styx video, but I'm usually listening to it on Rumble. I don't have to deal with the advertisers. I don't have to deal with the cheap marketing. I don't have to watch Martha Stewart slice a fucking pineapple, top off and sit there and talk about the commie cough VAXX, that you people have to put on your shows and whatnot to drag it out when you're not talking about anything. I would much rather hear Dan Bongino discuss about the Joe Biden leaks. I mean, don't get me wrong. Dan Bongino's probably 9 years behind on this information. Anybody who understood HR 5181 understood that the government had direct control of these social media sites, and that they were going to go ahead and implement biased against independence and whatnot, limit the freedom of information on these sites, and to go ahead and start driving off independent people who were skeptical of a lot of their media narratives. We were a big pain in their ass coming up in 2016, So, now you have the Dan Bongino leaks going ahead and vindicating a large amount of quote unquote conspiracy theorists that told you that these platforms were going to be ultimately that the people on these platforms were going to start to be targeted, that they were going to start to censor a lot of us, that they were going to start terminating channels like mine, various other people who get their content flagged down. But at least Dan Bongino's talking about it. He's addressing these issues. Steven Crowder is talking about, let's go after big kind. To be honest with you, the fucking market has been saturated on these platforms so much. It's going to be kind of hard to get any real independence to sit there and, get involved in a Captain America versus Iron Man Civil War type scenario that you're going to sit there and play the little plot device outside of the people on the Young Turks, which don't accommodate for an abundance of interest at all. And then you have Dan Bongino sitting there talking about the Ukraine shit. Everybody totally stood, even back in 2014, that the Obama administration, Biden as vice president, implemented a Nazi regime inside the Ukraine. This isn't even up for discussion. They implemented a Nazi regime called the Svoboda Party, and what you're seeing is them hijacking another sovereign government to go ahead and put in a proxy to go ahead and implement what? Another war between Russia and China? Well, you better go ahead and put on your brain buckets, and you send all these people out here in the media who are trying to sit there and say, we need to go after Putin. Putin is a tyrant and all this other shit. I'm already past hearing leftist arguments for it at all. I'm past hearing the CNN shit. I'm past hearing any of your peer-reviewed study, your statistics. Your statistics are in total conflict with reality. I just had this discussion with Dark Horse, where you go on Twitter, and these people who still think that they have any kind of legitimacy behind them, that they still think that they're popular. They still think that they're that young, sexy cheerleader back in high school after they've already had 3 kids and stuff like that, weigh about 350, and wanting the guy of their dreams and what, some guy that she she wouldn't give the time of day to in school. Now she wants that guy. That's what the Democrat Party is. They're suffering right now, and no doubt that they don't have the majority behind them. But you go and look at them just pushing these stupid freaking issues and whatnot. Nobody wants to hear it. It's going to be met with a degree of skepticism all the time. And then you have the entitled conservatives. See, the thing about the conservatives is, they won the popular vote, so now they think they're the shit. They think that, oh yeah, you know what? We don't have to worry. The Democrats are so horrible. We don't have to worry about general consensus because general consensus is on our side. That's not necessarily true. It really isn't. You still have to depend on the independent vote. And once you start getting that big head, that conflated head, much like the Democrats did back in 2012, because that's really when they started losing the consensus of the general population. Once you go ahead and start getting that big head, well, then the independents are going to be like, you know what? We're done with both of you. It's not a different party. It's not even a different administration that we need. It's a whole different fucking government. The sheer fact that you go down to the store, you see the eggs are $7.50. The price of gas is going to continue to go up. You did no more to stop the inflation that has went on, that 61% inflation. You can go ahead and talk about it. You can go ahead and have opinions about it. But absolutely, you did nothing to go ahead and prevent any of this stuff at all. Do you know what I'm saying? So no doubt that you can no more be trusted than the Democrats can at this point in time. It's becoming a real issue, and nobody's addressing any of it. So when these people whenever it really starts to affect, right now we're at the beginning. We still have 6 more years of this. You put in proxy governments in the Ukraine. You try to start World War III between Russia and China. And then you keep pushing the shit here on your little supposed independent platform, the conservative, the uniparty shit, which everybody's starting to talk about. Everybody's starting to see exactly what this is a uniparty. It's WWE. So yeah, you start to push this generic crap on everybody. You try to get everybody emotionally invested, but you don't have the traffic, mind you. You've killed most of the traffic on Twitter. You've killed most of the traffic on YouTube. You've killed most of the traffic on Facebook. There's just not a lot of traffic on here. So much so that why would anybody uh coherently invest in trying to run a business on YouTube? That makes no fucking sense. Or Facebook for that matter. And as far as I'm concerned, Steven Crowder has a bigger presence on both platforms than the Daily Wire does. So why would you go ahead and build a business model off of that? It makes zero fucking sense. And like I said, for the most part, it's just trying to accumulate what marginalized views there are here on Twitter that still watch independent sources, the marginalized views on Facebook that follow these marginalized sources and whatnot, the marginalized audience that follows these sources, on Instagram, on these generic sites now that have just become no more than marketing for these off-brand, cheap, knockoff, generic types, anyways, trying to sell some, product at the low quality product at premium prices. Um, Really, at the end of the day, I don't see where the business formula is all that coherent, anyways. But it is what it is. You can go ahead and continuously make these mistakes. And like I said, you can go ahead and use our formula of trying to go ahead and start some little Civil War type scenario where you're going to create some drama and then try to sell that drama off to your audience. And it's still not going to, it's not going to accumulate to that many views at the end of the day. What you get somebody saying Crowder was right, was it going to be like 500,000 views or whatnot on Twitter? And is that going to be impressed? Is that going to impress somebody like me? Absolutely not. I've seen the platform whenever it was more successful. When you've had guys, like I said, Russian videos, Alex Jones, Mark Dice, Mark Dice is kind of shilling out right now, but it is what it is. Whenever Mark Dice was doing quality content, he was doing his thing. And you had a lot of great channels out there. You had a lot of people investing in this platform. They thought it was a worthwhile cause. We were all having fun. We all got along. We all worked pretty good together. To now, whatever this is. None of you new tubers, as I should call you, new to shilltube, are going to ever have the kind of success that was put out here in 2013. I don't think that I think that y'all are kind of stuck on your own brand for the most part. Yeah, y'all may be able to work together as long as you can get something out of it. You know what I'm saying? You'll make these little alliances, and it'll be Lord of the Flies and whatnot. But like I said, the stuff that we were doing was a little bit more edgier. You don't have that autonomy to be that edgy that we were, back whenever we were doing it on YouTube. You have to watch what you say, you know because you're still, regardless if you get special treatment or not, you're still controlled. And so you can't be questioning shit like we did. You can't be stepping over certain boundaries without offending some of those people, some of those oligarchs that are in charge. And that's it. So, I mean, there is no real formula for success on these platforms anymore. And, the sheer fact that you're still shilling for the bullshit out there, still trying to divert attention. Everybody should be sitting there talking about not necessarily that Biden had classified documents. Of course, that in and of itself is kind of a walking hypocrisy. I've already discovered that normally when the left is uh, guilty of a crime, they throw that crime on Trump, and then they come out, and then their crime comes out, and they expect you to hold them to the same standard for their allegations against Trump. That's not how it works. But for the most part, I don't give a shit that Biden had the classified documents. I care about what's in them classified documents. And what's in them classified documents is them implementing a Nazi government inside a sovereign nation to go ahead and inflict, you know, uh, ill will on a society to go ahead and keep them from joining up with Russia, which would probably they saw a benefit in them having a pipeline and them going ahead and using their natural resources to go ahead and pretty much stabilize their economy and whatnot, which is exactly what Russia's trying to do. And you once again trying to get us in the middle of another uh, uh, conflict. If you go back and look in history, this is exactly why they want the Democrats in control of the Congress and the House and have control of the presidency. Every time the Democrats have been in charge, or not every time they've been in charge, but World War I was a Democrat majority. They held the House, they held the president. The president was a Democrat, the House was run by Democrats, and the Senate was run by Democrats. World War II, president was Democrat, House was Democrat, Senate was Democrat. Vietnam, it was the same thing. President was Democrat, House was Democrat, Senate was Democrat. And so we could see right now, history tends to repeat itself, how they're trying to get us into World War III. So this is exactly why they need the House, the Senate, and the Oval Office all to be run by Democrats. Democrats got us into more conflict that has cost more lives in this country than anybody. And they're pro-tax, which you would think with $3 trillion a year that these people have took in, you wouldn't want for nothing. You would definitely live in a better society if those tax dollars were spent right. Sheer fact is, they're not. So I meant, this is kind of where we are. We're at this balance of the left is pretty much dying off. The right is becoming the new left. They're becoming a uniparty, basically. I suspect that the dying platform of the left is going to assume, eventually end up getting into the right. They're going to kind of fall in line together eventually with your Mitch McConnells and your Nancy Pelosi's and various other people because the left is dying. It's a dying platform. I mean, the media is dying right now. We can see right now on their big tech sites and whatnot, they're kind of slowly dying a slow death. And eventually they're going to sit there and they're going to go into the right. They're going to sit there and migrate into the Republican Party as the last standing major political party in the United States. And so, that's kind of where we're going at right now. And you see a lot of these right-leaning conservative individuals are starting to, migrate to a lot of the leftist philosophies and whatnot. And so, it is what it is. You still have those independents like Salty Cracker that comes out. He's been doing videos for years. That sits there and kind of exposes us a little bit. Jimmy Dore. I think a lot of the people are starting to understand that neither one of these parties, but I will tell you this. The thing that the Democrats, that the left, that the people who have done a lot of the corruptions, a lot of those people in D.C. that work for the State Department, they really, really need to hope that this administration is taken out and it's replaced by a Republican proxy, because they're getting you're only going to get, there's really only two options really left once those parties collapse, once both parties collapse. And the one is less likely and the one is more likely. I'll go with the less likely first, is that you would get military tribunals for these people and their crimes that they've created. Like I said, DC is losing more and more confidence by the day of people. And it's not like people to really kind of react in such a measured manner, should I say. You know what I'm saying? Usually the first reaction, and this has just kind of been the way that they were social engineered to react by their own media brands, is to react, violently. The first reaction is the, immediate reaction is the one of violence. You know what I'm saying? Whereas opposed, due process, take your time, go ahead, does it So I meant, the tribunals is a measured action where it's due process. These people would get a fair trial, and then we would, come about what digression or degree of punishment do they get? Do they deserve? Most people would say the death penalty. I myself would like them to put this country back together. I would say that indentured servitude, exile, prefabricate roads, bridges, whatnot. Um, and put them in a place where they can go ahead and still help contribute to the infrastructure that they're clearly destroying in society and whatnot. That would be my personal opinion on what the punishment would be. But a lot of people are more capital in nature. The second, the second thing that could potentially become, if society keeps going this way, if their economies keep collapsing, and the most likely is just lynch mob justice. This is what we see going on in Sri Lanka and various other places where they're going after these people regardless and just taking them out and attacking them and, trying to kill them. And that's the, most likely scenario once all this stuff starts to collapse. When these people, right now you're seeing what is it, $3 or $4 a loaf of bread in some places. The eggs are up to, like I said, 7.50. The gas is going up. Whenever people are struggling because of all the stimulus you printed, and they're going to want answers, the answers are already out here. They've already been exposed. A lot of this shit's already been leaked. You can go ahead and look up the Victoria Nuland, Gregory Pyatt calls on YouTube and whatnot. So it's not like y'all were really hiding anything. We have the WikiLeaks. We have a lot of the stuff going on, the pay-to-play media. Everybody already understands these are not conspiracies. For them to be conspiracies, you would have to do a lot better at hiding them. And the sheer fact that a lot of this shit that you just openly brag about, it just goes to tell you. But once this affects everybody's lives, well, then that's when you're going to have to answer for all this shit that you've just done. And, you openly coming out and bragging about it, well, that's definitely not going to look good for you. And these people are not going to ask any questions. There's not going to be any due process. There's not going to let me hear their side of the story or their reasoning behind it. By then it's too late. So the sheer fact that you've gotten rid of a lot of the people who would potentially say we need to come up with solutions, we need to go ahead and figure out exactly how we should handle these situations and those bad actors responsible for these situations. The sheer fact that you've banned people like me and you've banned other people that were trying to sit there and me myself, I get tired of coming out and doing the all tell of woe on YouTube and on Twitter saying that if you keep on doing this, this is going to be the result of your actions, and just constantly being censored and ignored by anybody here in Silicon Valley. You've made your own bed. And the sheer fact is that, I'm going to be less likely to come out and advocate for any of y'all, particularly when I'm already being banned right now. Not like it would do any good. I got 2 people watching me right now. So how good is those 2 people? Absolutely not. It's not going to do any good. And that's because any kind of reach that potentially myself or say an Alex Jones, who may advocate for you, or anybody else that has been blackballed from the goddamn internet that would be sitting there trying to advocate, having tribunals, using the system right, going through due process, you've already limited our voices. So what you get is the lynch mob mentality people, those angry Karens that are going to be sitting there screaming to the top of their lungs how you're guilty of, all of their stuff going on. And you know what? They're not going to be wrong. So, their immediate reaction is going to be the consequences that you suffer. It's not going to be people like me sitting there saying, well, you know what? We can come up with an alternative to, I don't know, lynching people. But this is exactly where they're kind of taking society for the most part. And it's going to be really, really interesting in the coming years. We're just seeing the very, very tip of the iceberg. We're not seeing you still have the Inflation Reduction Act where they're going to arbitrarily tax businesses based on their perception of how much carbon emissions they use. You know what I'm saying? So ultimately, um, you know, you have all these jobs that were created by Bush tax cuts. These people were creating jobs because they were making money. Whenever those tax cuts are gone, and when you start arbitrarily taxing them on certain penalties, well, then these businesses will start to close down. And when those businesses start to close down, you're regulating, once again, you're using this to regulate the economy to make it more fascism, not less fascist. We'd hate to have any real capitalism in here because none of these people would be able to compete. But once that starts to happen and people, how many ever millions of people lose their jobs, well, then it's going to become an issue. And eventually you're going to have to pay for that. And like I said, you could sit there and say what I, want to say about me. I'm usually pretty spot on, years ahead of these things whenever they come. So, I mean, you could say whatever you want to say. You can sit there and say, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. And you're just a religious radical fundamentalist. And, well, like I said, it's like those plagues of woe that are mentioned in the Bible. You're not going to believe me. You're just going to continue living in this mindset. You got it all figured out. And then whenever those issues, and like I said, you'll start to see them creep up slowly. People will get more and more outraged. You'll have a lot more people coming together, starting to talk about these issues. But you're not going to know it because guess what? They're all banned on these platforms. And so, the sure fact is whenever these people have had enough, it's going to be immediate. It's going to be like what it says in the Bible. It's going to come like a thief in the night. You're not going to know. And then eventually it's going to, come to that crescendo where you're going to be in a lot of trouble. Like I said, yeah, maybe you conservatives that love Atlas Shrugged so much and pretend to be pro Christianity, pro life, pro guns, and all this other stuff. While you're sitting there pretending to be a Christian, maybe you ought to open up that Bible and see exactly what it says regarding to your Atlas Shrugs type of world that you're trying to create, because it doesn't work that way in the Bible. So, anyways, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this video up. You people tell me what you think. You like, sub, do the shit YouTube tells me to, and Facebook tells me to do to get over. And for now, I'm out.